Hi everyone, welcome to POS Lifeline. My name is Jason Thompson, and today we're going to be talking about theft. During the course of a year, employee theft can account for 20 to 25% of total sales in a typical restaurant. Seems pretty unbelievable. During the holidays, it actually jumps up to more than 40. In this series of videos, we're going to be talking in general terms about ways to identify and combat server theft in your restaurant. We'll look at a number of different mechanisms that you can employ to limit theft, identify it when it has happened, and then provide some best practices for how to deal with it once you found it. For each of the solutions we put forward, we've also put together some specific videos on how they work, what you need to know going in, and what you can expect when you implement them. All of these videos can be found on one of our two websites, either www.microspostraining.com or poslifeline.com. This first video is going to talk about employee theft, some basic practices that you can use to help stem the tide. The videos that follow will go into greater detail on how to combat the theft. And then finally, the third video, will talk about how to confront your employees. In some additional videos, we're going to show you best practices on how to utilize your Micros POS system in order to find and deal with it. We'll be using the different programs to show you how to identify theft, misuse of the POS system, and then ways you can create a paper trail for disciplinary action. Alrighty, let's get started. As an owner or an operator, there are a number of ways you can deal with theft. The first thing we need to do is to acknowledge that it's happening. There's a reason they say your bartender is a silent partner in your business. And as much as I wish it weren't true, you are going to find people are stealing from you. The first step then is to get over the emotional impact of this realization. And that's not as easily done as said. The next thing we need to do is we need to think through and carefully craft a strategy on how we're going to deal with it when we find it. This second step is crucial if we want to promote a positive employee environment in our restaurant or bar. Consistency in how we treat our employees is crucial not only to employee morale, but it also directly affects our customers' experience. The employees are arguably the most important part of your operation. Whether you have a neighborhood tap or a James Beard award-winning restaurant, the employees are crucial. By developing guidelines and responses to different scenarios, we're in a better position to deal with them when they occur. We'll talk more about this later on. Okay, now that we've prepared for it, we have to find it. We all have our hunches. You might see a bartender place money on the register. You may see a server grab a cocktail behind the bar when the bartender's busy. Finding it is actually not that difficult. And then once we've found it, we have to document it and implement our predefined disciplinary actions, separating ourselves from the emotions of the issue. So let's talk about how we prevent it. Arguably the most important thing is to foster an environment where the servers, bartenders, and yes, even the managers know it will not be tolerated. We can do this by implementing a series of controls, and as we mentioned, predefined responses. For every restaurant, bar, nightclub, lounge, whatever, these are all purely subjective. Use what you're comfortable with and leave the others behind. That said, here are 5 of the most important do's and don'ts to be aware of. Okay, first, and this is kind of a no-brainer, do not let your bartenders keep their tips in the drawer. There's absolutely no reason not to keep tips separate from the drawer. This seems pretty self-explanatory and basic, but you'd be surprised how many establishments allow their bartenders to do this. Second, do not allow bartenders to leave the drawer open after a sale. How many places have you been in just in the last 30 days where they've got a till and the till is cracked open about ½ an inch? There's absolutely no reason for this, especially if there's more than one bartender and they're sharing a drawer. Even if they're 3 deep at the bar, there's no reason ever for the drawer to be left open. An open drawer means lost revenue. The bartender simply needs to keep track mentally of how much money he's put in the drawer without ringing it in, and it's money in his or her pocket. Okay, third, do not allow your bartenders to check themselves out at the end of the shift. I don't care if you're running a small neighborhood bar or a multi-million-dollar nightclub. If you're a small neighborhood place without a nightly manager, have the bartender drop blindly at the end of the night. You can run the X and Z tape the next morning. If you're a larger place, have the manager as the only person allowed to run the reports, and then have the manager compare them to the drop slips the bartenders fill out. Don't give the bartenders their tapes or reports until they've been compared and approved by the manager. By having the bartenders run their own reports, you're essentially throwing one of the most important controls for the restaurant out the window. And fourth, do not allow the bartenders to make change from their tip jar. If the business is busy and the bartenders are running out of change, have a manager available to provide more. $50 or $100 at a time, rather than the $20 in singles that the bartender will be making out of their own tip jar. This is one simple way the bartender can pull extra money out of the drawer that wasn't rung in and not be found. And finally, do not have the bartender enter the nightly sales. This applies mostly to smaller places that use electronic cash registers. Usually in those situations, somebody usually has to enter all of the daily sales into the register and then code them to the correct department. If the person responsible for this is the bartender, change it immediately. Why, you may ask? Let me give you an example. Let's say that a bartender on a busy Saturday night has poured $50 in wine that he hasn't rung in. He's put the money in the register, but he hasn't rung it in as sales. At the end of the night, he only has to do two things. The first thing is he has to count his tips into the register and then add $50 when he pulls them out. Presto, the money is his. There's still one thing left, however, if the bartender is smart, and usually they are. He knows that costs are calculated using the register tapes. If he does this more than a few times, he realizes that the liquor cost will be too high, and that will cause suspicion of he and the other bartenders. But he's in charge of how those costs are entered into the cash register because he's the one that enters them every night. So, in order to keep his costs down, or accurate, actually he can even lower them, he can falsely ring in some of the restaurant's paper tickets. By falsely entering 2 filet dinners, for instance, at $25 a piece, if he enters that into the wine sales department rather than to the entree department, he just covered his liquor cost problem. The only way that he'll be discovered is well after the fact, perhaps a week, 2 weeks, even a month later, when the management or owner is looking at costs, and the only way he could be discovered is if the kitchen manager went through and audited all of the receipts from the previous 2 weeks. And we can all agree that would probably never happen. Okay, so that's the doom and gloom. We've kind of given you 5 things that right off the bat, that if you use, you'll see, I guarantee it, you're going to see a better bottom line. In the next section, we're going to show you some of the things that you can do that will allow you to identify and deal with the theft that's happening in your business. And if you've got a point of sale system, we're going to go a little bit even further in our 3rd video and in our bonus video and show you how you can use that to your advantage. All right, we'll see you in the next video.